What's up, everybody? So I just did a video on Pfizer, and I think to myself, maybe I should put a lot of money into Pfizer. Because when you look back, it's always easy to look back. And like if a stock went up like 1,500%, which we've seen before. And I always in my mind, I say, what if I put not that I would, because usually when the stock is at a low point, it's scary to put a lot of money into it. But even things like Bitcoin, like when Bitcoin was 1,000, or I think to myself, damn, if I just put 10,000 into this, what would I have? What happened? So I'm like, if I put 10,000 into this stock, and last year I'd have 160,000. Nvidia was a good example. And then I go through these in my mind. I'm like, oh wow, if I just put 50,000 into Nvidia, I'd have 800,000. And you're thinking about, if I put half my net worth into it, like say it was 200,000, half your net worth, you're like, I'd have 3.2 million. And you go through these scenarios in your mind. Of course, it's easier to say it after the fact. But even I was looking at because somebody commented on my Rolls Royce video. And I remember looking at Rolls Royce in like 2022. I did a video on it. And it was trading like, what was the low? It was 66. This is in that's in pounds. So 74 cents, the low. It was trading below $1 for a while. Ricey trades OTC. It's a big company, Rolls Royce. 76 billion market cap. It's not a penny stock. It's foreign. It's a British stock. And I was looking at it, and even if I got it for $1, at one point it was over $10. I could have 10x my investment, but how much would you put into it? So if you grew something 1,000%, like, I probably wouldn't risk more than 5,000. So it's not like I could retire on $55,000, but it just would be nice return. So what do you think about Pfizer? I keep every few months I look at Pfizer. In 1999, Pfizer hit almost 50. And then 23 years later, it's still trading at 50. So it was that real big peak before the dot-com crash. And it kind of didn't really move for 23 years. The highest it's ever been was 61 at the end of 2021, and now it's at 20. So it's down nearly 70% from the peak. And I look at this, well, I'm invested in Pfizer, so we're down like probably 35, 40%. And I'm thinking of dollar cost averaging. When I see it hit 40, I'm like, oh, 40 is a good price, because it was 60 just in 2021. And then I see it at 30 and 25. Now it's 20. So like, what price point should I get into the stock? Because at some point, if a stock gets low enough, at some point it's going to seem like an appealing investment. And it's a big company. This is not like a fly-by-night company. This company 122 billion market cap. It's been around, I think, since 1876. Its predecessor, 1849. I mean, so it's not going anywhere. So why is it coming down so much? Well, they did release their 10K. And the reason it peaked was COVID. They made a lot of money on COVID vaccines. Daryl, what's up? I know Paxlovid is one of the vaccines. It's taking forever to search. Of course, it doesn't come up. Let's see. They do give a breakdown of the drugs or vaccines they sell. Okay, here it is. Let me just edit this so it's easier to read. I have Pfizer. I know it's brutal seeing it go down, but then you think this stock could easily, 3x or 5x or 10x. Like, it's kind of like when Meta got down to 90 a share, and now it 15x from that point. It's almost like, because it is risky if you invest in a stock. Say your goal is a 10x, which isn't easy, but say your goal is a 10x. If you invest in a stock with like a billion market cap, right, and you're hoping it gets to 10 billion, but it's never been like more than like 1.2 billion, so it's kind of a stretch. Of course, it's happened before, but it's kind of a stretch to find a company to go from 1 billion to 10 billion. But if it's 1 billion and at one point a few years ago it was 12 billion, like a situation like that should make you feel a little more comfortable. Not that it will come back, but if it was in the first place, it's kind of like if you play sports. Like if I like say I did a 5-minute mile, even if it was in college, I ran a 5-minute mile, and now I'm at 7 minutes because I'm older. Maybe I gained more weight, but just the fact that I did a 5-minute mile in the past, it's partly psychological, because if I did it in the past, then in my mind I'm like, I could get back to that point. So if you ran a 7-minute mile and you've never run better than 7 minutes, it's going to be a pretty big mountain to climb to hit 5 minutes. But if I did it in the past, it shows I at least had that ability to do it. Same thing with investing. If it was at this level in the past, it's much more likely to get to that level than if it never was. So this is 2022 revenue, 2023, 2024. So the main reason Pfizer has come down is because in 2022, Paxlovid, 19 billion of revenue, Comirnaty, another COVID vaccine, 38 billion of revenue. So those two drugs alone are like 56 billion, which is pretty close to its revenue now. Its revenue right now is 62 billion for the whole entire 2024. So just these two drugs alone was nearly what it is currently. So those two COVID vaccine has come down a lot. It's still there, but it's not like the demand it was. So Paxlovid went from 19 billion to 6 billion. Comirnaty went from 38 billion to 5 billion. So the stock has come down a lot. Oncology segment will continue to do well going forward. Yeah, oncology is lots of demand. Oncology, cancer drugs, because the drugs that reach a really wide population, weight loss is a big part of the population, cancer, heart disease, those kind of drugs hit everyone, or like at some point in your life you will. I think it's kind of like almost half the people who die heart disease, the other half is cancer. I mean, pretty much those two are almost the entire reason people die. There's obviously other things, suicide, things like that, but those two, in terms of non like suicide, non like crazy accidents, it's going to hit somebody at some point. Um, Last half, are we aware of how much tariffs might? Yeah, that's another thing, tariffs. But tariffs will hit everybody in some sense. It's not like tariffs will hit them more than uh, other drug companies. Of course, you want to look into it a little bit, but I have a feeling if it was a non-U.S. company, it might get more affected. But I think they do a good amount of manufacturing in the U.S. Um, let's see if they talk about it actually. And if you import from China, you get hit much harder than. So they do have a lot of factories in the state they sell the drugs. So if they were in the Netherlands or Ireland, those manufacturing facilities pretty much sell to that country. It's just a efficient way to do business. If you're selling a lot of product in a certain country, open a manufacturing plant in that country, so you don't have to deal with making it in the U.S. and shipping it, or vice versa. So they do have factories in a lot of countries, but a lot of the reason for that is because they sell drugs in those countries. Some companies sell almost all their products in the U.S., but they still manufacture in China and Vietnam because it's cheaper to manufacture there. Um, so let's see. These are where they're incorporated, so it's not. These aren't manufacturing facilities. I imagine somewhere it's going to talk about where they manufacture products. So aliens comes to Earth to get cancer. Um, I guess so. I'm not sure where the joke is there, but I think that's a joke of some sort. So let's see. Maybe they talk about here. In addition to the company involved in the contract manufacturing business, it serves wholesalers, retailers. Let's see, where does Pfizer manufacture drugs? Pfizer has established one state-of-the-art manufacturing facility and two R&D centers in China. So I'm sure they do manufacturing all over the world. I'm not sure if they're real heavy in China. Maybe somebody knows. I'm sure it's Pfizer manufacturing locations. global manufacturing, supply, and distribution. Okay, maybe that. Okay. They have 30 manufacturing sites, 180 countries reached. I was hoping they would list those 30. Leaders in manufacturing and supply. Sometimes it's hard to find information. I'm sure it's somewhere. Okay, this manufacturing site is in North Carolina. Okay, here we go. Here's a chart. So I think these circles are where they have manufacturing facilities. Okay. Every drug we manufacture is crafted with Pfizer scientific manufacturing. So 35 manufacturing facilities in 6 continents. So they have, what is it, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, about 12 or 13 in the US. Then you have, is that Brazil? Well, this is the US. I mean, Florida. Florida is not connected to Brazil. Is this Mexico? I think it's Brazil, even though Florida is not connected to Brazil, but I think they kind of, this big area that looks like it would be Brazil. Well, that's South America. That's all of South America. So I don't know what country it is. It's right here. Um, Maybe Venezuela. They have manufacturing, and then they have 2 down here in South America. So that might be Brazil or possibly Argentina. And then you have Europe right here. So they have a good amount in Europe, maybe 15. So that must be the UK right at the border. Well, maybe it's Ireland. They have, yeah, I think Ireland actually, because they have own a few Irish companies. So all over Europe. So a bunch of countries. I'm sure Germany, France. Um, so they don't have that much going on in China because China is right here. So maybe southern China, only 4, and one of the, I don't know what island this is, right off of the mainland. Maybe Philippines or Vietnam, but it looks like Philippines, right? Or Japan. That's Japan. And then Australia down here. So 3 in Australia. So they're not too heavy in China. They're much heavier in Europe, uh, Western Europe, US, of course. So Paris hopefully won't affect them too much. Japan, Venezuela, yeah, good call. Yeah, that's Venezuela, and that's Japan. Yeah, and these 2 countries are somewhere in the Middle East or Africa. That's Africa, right? M- Malaysia. That's Malaysia. I'm not that good at. And then Australia has 3. Southern Australia. They don't eat most of China. They don't even touch most of China. It's just in a few, only in 4 places in China. And then there's some in middle or Eastern Europe, which is probably like maybe Romania, Ukraine, Poland. Yeah, Richard. Yeah, long time. I haven't been as good at uploading videos. So yeah, so those are the 2 main drugs that brought it down in the past 2 years. Although a lot of pharmaceutical companies have grown a lot in terms of market cap since 2022. They've gone down like 60, 70%. Because I think other companies like Novo Nordisk has the weight loss drug. So that's why that stock has just been going through the roof. Okay, right here. I don't know why this is not working. Let me, I don't know. Let me close the file and open it. So annoying. Eli Lilly. Yeah, they're number 1. Eli Lilly, 650 billion. So their revenue is a lot less than Pfizer. They have 45 billion of revenue. Pfizer 63 billion. So Pfizer is 50% higher. Johnson Johnson is double Eli Lilly, but Eli Lilly is the biggest by far. Eli Lilly, Prozac, that's the big one. Cymbalta. Trulicity, that's another popular one. Jardiance. But Novo Nordisk is kind of cornering the market on the weight loss drugs, which is the whole semaglutide. I don't know if I'm saying that right. That's Ozempic. The medical name is semaglutide. Semaglutide. That's what Ozempic, which is widely popular, and Wegovy. So that's how they spin it. It was a drug for people with diabetes, and the people who took the drug lost weight. So now it's a weight loss drug. And I bought Johnson and Johnson, and didn't really make much money. I think I ended up losing on that investment. Sometimes when you do a lot of homework, you do worse. Like when you try to really understand things, you don't make as much money sometimes. But if you kind of like not do a ton of due diligence, just kind of go off the cuff. At least for me, a lot of times, it just didn't pay off. I thought I figured it out. Yeah, Johnson and Johnson, it was 170 in 2021, and it pretty much, and it's down now. It's 150. So I'm glad I got rid of that because it hasn't really done anything. Eli Lilly is a stock I trade in this space. That's a good one. So it used to be Johnson and Johnson was number one for the longest time. Um, Now they're half Eli Lilly. AbbVie, which another big company, Merck, what used to be the top three, AstraZeneca, Amgen, Gilead. The stock that pays the highest dividend is Organon. I think that's the women's. They focus on female drugs, if I'm not mistaken. They specialize in core therapeutic fields: reproductive medicine, contraception, psychiatry, hormone replacement therapy, anesthesia. Am I thinking of a different company? I thought it was focused on women's health. Okay. In May 2020, Merck announced that Organon will be the name of the pending spinoff of its women's health legacy products. So it is, that's their focus. But I think it's come down. Their products are divided into three categories: women's health, which is 27% of their revenue, biosimilars, and established brands, 64%. That that's the thing. Like, if you get your CPA or if you get like a license like that, people think you know everything, but it's really high level textbook learning. Because I got my bachelor's and I got my MBA, and I didn't really learn. I learned very little, very little. People would think, oh, you're an MBA, you must know, you must know how trading works. You must know this. They don't teach you that. It's so very high level, and it's just you learn it for a few weeks and then you're done. The only time you really absorb something is when you do it day in, day out, like your job. If you don't do something consistently, you can't remember it. It's impossible. It's kind of like people who moved here from another country. Even if they moved here when they were 10, they speak fluent whatever country they're from. If they're from Japan, fluent Japanese, fluent. If they're from France, they're an expert in that language. But after a while, if you don't talk to people in your homeland that language, you forget it, you lose it. Even if you were fluent and you were at like the highest level in like something, if you don't do it, like play a sport, you'll forget about it. Same thing with education. If you learn what a bond is for 1 week, doesn't mean in 10 years you know what a bond is. If you never look at it again, can't remember. Listens most thick by choice. Pfizer has no pipeline. That's a problem too, right? They don't have a strong pipeline, and that's what investors look at. They don't look at current revenue and current profits. They look at the future. So is Pfizer a good investment? It seems like it is, but it's so hard to pull the trigger. Um, it's kind of like when you're looking into a stock, you try to look for the positives if you want to buy it, of course. And then if somebody says something negative to you, it kind of sits in the back of your head and you can't shake it. And then you start swaying the other way. Um, so Organon 9%. That's a big dividend. Pfizer, because the reason dividends get high, it's almost all the time, like almost 100% of the time. The reason a dividend gets real high, like when I say high, like north of 6%, because that's abnormal. You can't get a guaranteed return above 5%. Like if I gave you 100% guaranteed return of say 7%, which isn't like crazy, but I said I'm going to give you, there's no way you wouldn't get anything but 7%. And nothing's guaranteed, but if somehow you were convinced it's 100% guaranteed, and say it was, you would take all the debt in the world if you can get debt for below 7%, even 6%. If you could find places to give you a loan, you would take it. You would put all your money into that investment, even if, like I'm saying, even like when rates came down. Um, so this is your guaranteed rate, 100%, and it's not crazy. You return 7%. It's not like I'm guaranteeing like a 20%. And if you could get debt, obviously you're going to look for debt the rest of your life and pile it into this 7% return. So so that's your profit. Now, uh, how much money can you accumulate? Um, say it was um, if you could only get $10,000, then only $200 annual return. Say you could get a $10,000 loan. So every year you would get, you know, $200 of interest, which is not that appealing. But like when rates were coming down, like 3, 4, 5%, um, then you could start taking out more debt, and then if you get $1 million, that's 20,000 guaranteed. Did I do that right? Yeah. But of course, nothing's guaranteed, right? I don't know how I got into that tangent. No, I can't remember. I think I have to leave at 4. Okay. So it doesn't look like they're going to be too affected by tariffs. Um, my DCF says $42 a share. They're trading at 22. When you compare it to other companies, now they're 10th, ranked 10th in terms of market cap. I think they were like probably top 3 for a while. Revenue still going up. Their 5-year annual revenue growth rate is 9%, but it's come down a lot. It was over 100 billion in 2022, their revenue. Now it's 63 billion. So that's a little concerning. So the pipeline is the big deal. We know they have really good drugs. Their biggest is Eliquis, 7.4 billion of revenue. That's for 2024, but that's only up maybe 7% from last year. Last year was 6.7 billion. Before that, 6.5 billion. Prevnar, their second biggest drug, is pretty much flat. Revenue 2 years ago is same as now. So either they need to make more money on their current products, or they need to come out with new products. Either or. Ideally, both. Nurtec went from 200 million to 1.3 billion, so that's grown a lot. Vyndaqel, in terms of percent growth, that more than doubled from 2.4 billion to 5.5 billion. So that's probably their biggest drug in terms of like future potential. So yeah, I think the point I was trying to make before, if there's somehow a way for you to get a guaranteed return, obviously all the money you earn from your job, you can put into this 7% guaranteed return. But you can accumulate as much debt as you want, because even if the debt is at 5-6%, you're going to get a profit on that money. So if you could somehow scrounge up $10 million, and you pay a 5% interest rate, you get that 7% return. So you're profiting risk-free. You're getting $200,000 of profit. Of course, it's hard to convince someone to give you a debt at 5%, $10 million. You need collateral. So I don't know if there's a way to prove you get a guaranteed return, but we could all accumulate debt somehow as long as it's below 7%. So let's look at their does anybody have ideas for other pharmaceuticals as an investment? So here's their income statement. It was over 100 billion in 2022. That's from COVID, and it came down to 60 billion last year, but it is up a little bit from 60 billion to 63 billion. So there's some hope, but they really need to get it back up to like 80 billion just to, in order for the stock to double or triple, they need to get to that point. You're averaging in Merck, yeah. I mean, nothing wrong with like a stable company pouring money into a stock like that. You generally have a good return. Of course, nobody knows the winner, but if you were like, and I wish I did this, of course, but if you were like me and you were all in on Meta, I wish I just kept piling my money into it instead of diversifying, because I would have like, $30 million, because I could have made like a 2,000% return on a lot of my money, because I got it at IPO at 40. I didn't have that much money when it IPO'd, but I did accumulate money as I worked. But everything's, hindsight's 2020. So it's so easy to look back and say, oh, if you had $100,000 at one point to invest your entire net worth or life savings, you want to, put it into maybe index funds, some stocks. But yeah, how would you have known if you said, oh, if I put into Meta, I could turn out 100,000 to 3 million? If you had the 100,000 when Meta was 40 at IPO, maybe not 3 million, 1.5 million. I mean, I'm happy I picked them and I stuck with them, and Costco too. But I'm like, why did I try to invest in other stocks and risk it? I should have just stuck to my guns. I think that a lot had to do with the channel. Because initially, when I started a channel and I showed my portfolio, people were like, "You're a faker. You talk about so many different stocks, but you're only invested in like 3 stocks, and the rest is index funds." So I should have just stuck with my original plan. I would have had more money, but I felt I should prove it. I should prove that I could pick stocks, and I did have some good winners. There's a company, New Bank Holdings. I put 25,000 in that stock, and at one point it was 100,000. It was up like 300 something percent, but it's come down from the peak. But I'm still up like 150% on that. But I burned a lot of money too. But it's easy to look back, I guess. Media was nasty on Meta, Facebook, IPO. Yeah, exactly. I bought it at 40 the very first time I could buy it. And then within, I was down 40% right away. It was under 20 almost right away. And people, that's when I worked on Wall Street. And people were like, oh, why would you invest in Meta? 40 is crazy. This chart says 27, but I couldn't get it. Nobody could get it that price. Maybe if you got it, if you were like an insider pre-market. That was in June 2012. Oh, it lasted a long time. I didn't realize it lasted so long. I thought only a few months. So even a year after I had the money in, I was down like 40%. It got down to 19 at the low. It never got that low again. It fell to like, I think 89 in 2022, but it never got even close to below 20. But that was good. I turned a 10,000 into like 150,000. I was doing a lot of options trading, so I was doing covered calls. So I never actually sold it, but it got called away because I was just doing covered calls, collecting the premiums. And I think it was around 2017 or 2018, it got called away because I kept doing covered calls. It's kind of like I'm chasing pennies. I'm like I'm stepping on dollars to chase pennies. Like I'm trying to like pick up like $1,000, $2,000 without doing much work. Because if the stock was flat or went down, or even went up a little bit, I'd still maintain my stock and collect the premium. So I'm collecting just like maybe $1,000 the most, and then I get called away because it goes from like it went from like one. I may have sold it was 120 just to give you an example, and I sold a covered call at 140, and it ended up going to like 170. So I got called away. I messed up in 2022, bought at 105, sold at 115. But it's so easy to like it's so easy to say I messed up. But there were stocks. I remember I bought GNC when they filed bankruptcy. And I put a lot into it. I made a video. I put 50,000 into the stock when they filed bankruptcy. And the very next day the stock doubled. Or maybe went up 50, 60%. So my 50,000 was like 80,000. And I'm stupid. I'm like, I'm gonna sell. I wanted to like to triple or something, and then it ended up coming down to my cost basis. I just sold and didn't make anything. But so if I would have held out even longer, I would have lost most of my money because it ended up coming down then almost to zero. But sometimes it keeps going up, and you kick yourself. But a lot of times you think, oh my God, thank God I sold because the company I'm going bankrupt. So thank God I sold and didn't hold. So you never really know. Yeah, I mean, there's like 100 scenarios. I remember in 2011 or 12, I had, I was getting Netflix in the mail, the red sleeved envelope. and I was like, this company, I really like Netflix, um, and I wanted to buy it, and when it was $20 a share, and I didn't. And then it got up to nearly 700 at the end of 2021, and I'm like, sheesh, am I ever going to get into Netflix? And then it went from 7. I think I got in at 380. Yeah, 388 in January 2022, 388. So I'm like, it's down 40% from the peak. So I bought into it. And within 3 months, I'm down almost 50%. But now I'm up like 200%. So I'm fine. But like when I was down almost 50%, I'm like, sheesh. I waited for it to drop nearly 50% from the peak. And now I'm down 50%. I wish I would have waited longer, but you don't know. You don't really know. As long as you make somewhat of a good decision. It's kind of like if you bought Netflix anytime between 2002 and 2022. So in that 22-year time frame, anywhere you bought it, of course, if you bought it here, you like 50,000 extra return. But even if you got it here at 500, it's not that bad. You're up 100%. That's the thing. If you make good decision, if enough time goes by, it's just a blip. You don't even notice this stuff. You do notice it if you buy it if you bought it here, if you bought it at 620, and then it's down to like 180, so you're down like 75%, and then you end up selling at like 500 because you're like, I just want to get, because you see it goes up and down. So when it hits 450 and then goes down to 360, you're like, oh, I should have sold at 450, and then it goes back up to 450 and you sell. You're like, okay, I'm done. I lost 20%. I just want to get out of the stock. So on these small charts, yes, you can easily look and say, oh my God, I should have sold, or I should have bought, whatever it is. But when you bring it out far enough, if you invest in a good stock, you'll make money. So anytime you could have bought it, you would have made a nice return. You trade Netflix? Actually, I'm going to dinner to leave at 4. We're trying at this new restaurant. Yeah, thanks for joining. I may stream tomorrow. Check out the video I just did on Pfizer. And I do scratchers sometimes. I know it's a waste of money, but it's like a hobby. It's just fun. It's relaxing. It's nice to do something where you don't think. And you could win $15 million. That's the top prize. Okay. Well, thanks a lot. I'll talk to you later.